Welcome, everybody, to Verbum Day, lectionaries, Lutherans, and Proper 27. Here we are, folks. This is one of my favorite entries in the lectionary, and of course it always is when we have the deuterocanonical texts. Sad news for me, I guess, is my congregation decided just recently on the for our Sunday lectionary because we were moving to hard copy lectionaries, our Sunday lectionary, which we used to use here, the Missouri lectionary, and then I arrived and I switched it to the Revised Common because it's better and has the Deuterocanonicals, at least as an option. But then they voted, because we're getting the hard copy, that they wanted the one from Concordia Publishing House because it says Lutheran on the spine and not Episcopal, because we don't want it to say Episcopal. And so my Deuterocanonicals are going away for Sundays, at least in the lectionary. I'm still going to bring them up, of course, in the sermons because I'm me. But on the brighter news for me, our weekday lectionaries, the hard copy ones that we got, do have the Deuterocanonicals, so I still win if you think about it. But don't think about it too hard. Anyways, we're beginning today, and by the way, we're just, what are we? 2 Sundays away from Christ the King. That's the last Sunday in the church year. This Lord's Day at St. Matthew's Lutheran, we're having an ordination, so this is festive, if you will. Maybe it doesn't feel festive, but I promise you it is festive. So we begin in Wisdom 6, and as you can see, there's a non-apocryphal option, which is Amos 5. We're going to talk about that. And there is you can either use a psalm or in place of the psalm, use Wisdom 6 and just continue that reading. So we're going to cover that continuous reading because that's essentially how it would flow. If it was Wisdom 6, 12 through 16, or Wisdom, and then Wisdom 6, 17 through 20, we're going to take this whole text as Wisdom 12 through 20. Then we're going to look at Amos 5. We're going to look at Psalm 70. We're going to move through that way. But beginning with Wisdom 6, again, we're looking at this as one text, even though in the lectionary it's cited as 2, broken up. We begin, wisdom is radiant and unfading, and she is easily discerned by those who love her. Mind you, the gospel reading, in case you didn't already know what it is this Lord's Day, it is the parable of the 10 foolish virgins. And so, of course, this is right on the cusp of Christ the King, right on the cusp of the last Sunday in the church year, which is themes of judgment, the final day, the last day, the day of judgment, the day of Christ's return. And so everything is coming up to this boiling point of a theological climax, wherein and whereby we are being, if you will, not poked and prodded, but encouraged to dig deeper into wisdom, dig deeper into virtue, to be ready, to be in process and in progress toward that telos, that end of perfection that God is bringing us to by his grace, to actually be working that through in our own lives as God works it into us by his word and sacraments. And so this is why we're talking so much about wisdom compared to foolishness. Again, this is that two ways motif that's always being brought up. Wisdom is radiant and unfading, and she is easily discerned by those who love her, and she's found by those who seek her. She hastens to make herself known to those who desire her. One who rises early to seek her will have no difficulty, for she will be found sitting at the gate. To fix one's thought on her is perfect understanding, and one who's vigilant on her account will soon be free from care, because she goes about seeking those worthy of her, and she graciously appears to them in their paths, and meets them in every thought. The beginning of wisdom is the most sincere desire for instruction, and concern for instruction is love of her, and love of her is the keeping of her laws, and giving heed to her laws is assurance of immortality, and immortality brings one near to God. So the desire for wisdom leads to a kingdom. So let's take this a little bit slower, kind of break down what's going on here. Now, whenever we have wisdom in the text, for example, not just wisdom of Solomon, but the Proverbs of Solomon as well, or even in the Psalms, wisdom always runs the risk of being personified one way or the other by biblical readers and exegetes who get it in their heads that they might be allowed to go a little further than they should, right? And so they say wisdom is the Holy Spirit, or wisdom is Christ, or wisdom is this, wisdom is that. Look, let me say this. For all of the personification of wisdom that happens, it's a literary function, and it's a literary figurative function. It's not literal. There's no literal person named wisdom, right? We're speaking about this trait, this thing that's good. Understand it in this way then. Wisdom. What is wisdom? Well, we could say wisdom is doing the right thing, or knowing the right thing, or it's the guide that helps us walk that right path. It's not necessarily the law, but it's that thing in us that decides to do the law. One who decides to do what is right, which is the law, is one who's wise, right? Wisdom is radiant, it's unfading, it's eternal, it's glorious. It is easily discerned by those who love her. That is, those who love wisdom, those who seek for wisdom, who seek that good way, they can tell which is the good way, which is the evil way. They can tell the difference between the two ways. They can discern. She hastens to make herself known to those who desire her. And so people say, I would love to become wise. I would love to seek the will of God. I would like to know the ways in which I should go. And the word of God is saying simply, very clearly to us all, desire goodness, seek goodness, be diligent in learning goodness, and it will come to you. Goodness will come to you, because that goodness is brought to you by God. So it hastens to make itself known to all who desire it. And this is true if we wanted to personify wisdom, which we probably shouldn't do. We should probably hold our desire to do that a little bit at bay if we can. But if we were to let loose and do it anyways, if we applied this directly to God, this is still true. Those who seek God, those who desire God, even though God doesn't come to them because they desire him, he will come to them all the more quickly. Because why? He's always right there. All you have to do is turn around. And this is the truth. So those who desire to find God, those who desire goodness, well, goodness and God, they always come together, and they're right there because they're the ones chasing you down. One who rises early to seek her will have no difficulty, for she will be found sitting at the gate. To fix one's thought on her is perfect understanding, and one who's vigilant on her account will soon be free from care. And this is similar to saying, for example, as in the Psalms, likewise in the prophets, those who know everything but don't know the will of God, they're stupid and they're fools. But those who know nothing, who are paupers, if you will, or plowboys, yet they know the word and the will of God, they know everything. They have perfect understanding. They have perfect knowledge. And one who's vigilant, studying these things, will be free from care, because she, wisdom, goes about seeking those worthy of her, and she graciously appears to them in their paths and meets them in every thought. And that is, the more we strive to walk in the ways of wisdom and goodness and virtue, the more easily that will come to us. And there's actually, of course, there's lots of good books on this, but one which comes to mind, I don't think it's from Kreeft. I think it's from one of his friends. I wish I knew the book title. Anyways, the author there, he's speaking about, in the eyes of some rabbinic Jews, you might find them saying the one who struggles and overcomes the struggle in virtue is the more virtuous one, like he has done the better thing. Yet the Christian theologians and ethicists have always taught rather a completely different understanding, which is this, that those who, if you will, those who, how should you say, are quick and inclined and naturally gravitate towards the goodness are the better one, the one doing the better thing. And this is something that grows in us as we practice the way of virtue and goodness and life and light, that as we not just dwell more in it because we're coming to church or reading the word of God or in prayer or whatever, no, those things are all true, but in that we are doing all of these kinds of things, all the more easily it will come to us because we are spending time in the things of God, and the things of God transform us into the likeness of God. And those who are in the likeness of God do the things of God, right? The beginning of wisdom is the most sincere desire for instruction. And concern for instruction is love of her, is love of wisdom. And so wisdom is not saying, I want this wisdom so that I can do X, but it's really a desire for goodness, to know goodness. And where's goodness found, really? Like, pull this out of the personified poetic setting. A desire for wisdom, a desire to know goodness, you're going to find that nowhere other than in God. Right? You might find little glimpses of it, but you will not find the fullness of it anywhere other than in God himself. In God himself, all goodness is seen, all goodness is found, all virtue is present. And so those who desire goodness, they desire God. Those who desire God, they desire goodness. These two things, they go together. Just as faith and works, they go together. And love of her, love of wisdom, even love of God is the keeping of his law, if you will. And giving heed to his law is assurance of immortality. And immortality brings one nearer to God. So the desire for wisdom leads to a kingdom. Now, some will take this, of course, as a, what would you say, a pit against faith alone, and say, oh, well, it's salvation by works. I don't like this deuterocanonical text, whatever. Some people will do that. There's nothing we can say to convince them otherwise, but all I will say is this, that as one who is believing, trusting, placing all of their hope on the one who is good, who is virtuous, who is light, and then to say, I am not going to be walking in that way, there's something wrong. There's something wrong there. There's some disconnect going on, a cognitive dissonance. Either they're lying about the first part, or they're ignorant of the work God is doing in regard to the second part. And so those who love God, Jesus himself, he says this, we all know this, right? If you love me, you'll keep my commandments. And of course, we can bicker over whether we keep them or not, right? And lots of Lutherans, we like to say, well, we don't keep them. And in a sense, that's true. But our own Book of Concord says, and I'm going to be podcasting in the Book of Concord later on, just today, right? Book of Concord, a large catechism, as well as a small catechism to a lesser extent, but especially the large one in regard to the law. And of course, in Article 4 or 5, depending on your translation, how they splice it, of Melanchthon's Apology to the Augsburg Confession on love and the fulfilling of the law. When we are regenerated, when we are saved by the work of God, reborn, that's what regenerated means. Some will say born again. They say, I'm a born again Christian. We don't really use those kinds of terms because of the stigma they have due to evangelicalism, which is not a political position, but essentially a group of churches. When that happens, when we are converted, God takes up space in us. He takes up home in us, and it begins his work of transforming us. And there, as we confess of that in the large catechism there, he enables us to begin keeping the law. This we also see in Article 6 of New Obedience. Of course, the change doesn't come by the law, it comes by the gospel, but there is a change, there is a transformation, there is a beginning of goodness, a spark of a first fire that God's lighting within our souls to heat us toward the good, if you will. And so he says, in doing this, we have assurance of mortality. Well, this is very true. We might like to say it's not true, but it is. And our own Book of Concord says this as well, where again, in Melanchthon's Apology, we speak of good works as being signs and even seals by which we can see and look at the salvation that God is working in us and know that. And so, if you will, your good works are essentially what Baptists think baptism is. There's a funny thing for you. Now, let's look at our is not proto-canonical. Is it proto-canonical? Whatever the term for this is, our normal Old Testament reading. Alas, for you who desire the day of the Lord. Wait, what's the reading here? 18 through 24. Why do you want the day of the Lord? Now, again, what is this day of the Lord that we're talking about? Well, we're working towards the day of the Lord proper. This is the coming of Christ, our King, wherein we celebrate not only his return on earth, but his judgment, which is a good judgment, by the way. And it's good news for us that he's coming to judge the world. He's coming to bring justice. He's coming to redeem, to save, to separate the sheep and the goats. And all of this, surprise, surprise, is good and not bad. But the greatest part of this is the people's salvation. Yet it's not just that. It's all of this. So let's look at all of this and see, what is it? What is it exactly? We hear, alas, for you who desire the day of the Lord. And we as Christians, we do this all the time. We desire this not only in our hearts, but also liturgically and explicitly, where you'll hear many Christians say things like, Maranatha, come Lord Jesus, or I wish the Lord would return, or such and such, Lord willing, unless the Lord returns. We say all kinds of the darndest things, don't we? And so Amos asks us this question, alas, for you who desire the day of the Lord. Why do you want the day of the Lord? It is darkness, not light. So in this kind of context, which Amos is speaking, for whoever this is desiring this day, it will not be good for them. As if someone fled from a lion and was met by a bear, right? So you're saying you want the day of the Lord. And this is really about this, at least this portion, is really connecting us to this parable of the, oh, I don't like how this NRSV titles this, parable of the 10 bridesmaids. It doesn't say they're foolish. We know that they're foolish. The 10 foolish virgins. What does I'm curious now. I'm curious. What does where am I getting this foolish virgins thing from? Is this the KJV, the NKJV? What's this from? Let's see. Is this an what does the ESV say of this? Is this about foolish virgins or normal virgins? What kind of virgins are these? Oh, just 10 virgins. That's not going to cut it for me, guys. They need to be foolish because that's how I remember this going down. Maybe this is, I'm thinking of the NABR. Who cares, right? Anyways, you have these people who are not prepared for the coming of the Lord. They have not gotten their ways straight, if you will. And so this coming of the Lord is going to suck for them. And so they're crying out because they want salvation from like tax inflation or whatever it is. And he says, you're trying to escape from a lion, but you've met a bear. You've met a worse thing here for you. Or you went into the house and rested a hand against the wall and it was bitten by a snake. It is not the day of the Lord. Sorry, is not the day of the Lord darkness and not light and gloom with no brightness in it? Well, for these people, maybe it is, right? He's saying this day of the Lord for you, whoever he's speaking to, right? It's going to be bad. And why? Because this is a day of judgment. And this is so often the way that we think of the day of the Lord. It is a coming in judgment. It is. But let's continue, right? He says, I despise your festivals and take no delight in your solemn assemblies. So these are people who are practicing, of course, they're Jews, so they're doing the Old Testament stuff and things, but let me bring this into our own context for you. These are people who are coming to church on the Lord's Day. They're celebrating even not just Christmas and Easter and every single day of Holy Week. They're celebrating the weekday feast, the Holy Cross, even the Saints' Days. They're doing the whole shebang, right? They're doing everything that was found in the LBW, if you will. Even though you offer me your burnt offerings and your grain offerings, you offer me your money, your time, your service, he says, I will not accept them. Why? And the offerings of well-being of your fatted animals, I will not look upon. Why? Why? Take away from me the noise of your songs, your hymn sings. Why? I will not listen to the melody of your harps. We ask why, right? Well, it's the same thing that we see in, for example, Cain and Abel's story. Is it not? Because we know that the Lord loves the sacrifices of his holy people. We could just read, for example, with Noah. He gets off of the ark finally, and he comes, and what's the first thing that he does? He sets up an altar to the Lord. And this is something that's all over the Old Testament, but especially in Noah's case, right? The typesetting in this EHV is bizarre. I'm not sure I can find it for you. But just to cite it to you from memory, or paraphrase it from memory, rather, Noah goes and he sets up this altar to the Lord, and he makes a sacrifice to the Lord upon this altar, and that sacrifice is a sweet-smelling scent in the nose of the Lord, and he delights in that because he delights in the worship of his people. Yet, these are people who are worshiping God, but their hearts are far from him. They're doing the external things correctly, but they do not have love for him. They do not have care for him. Or maybe it's a little bit different. You could say, bring it askew a little, just a little. Maybe they're coming to divine service, but then they're going out and they're going to the club and they're doing all kinds of things and doing drugs and having fornicating intercourse and whatever. It's usually in the Old Testament things that are less about purity, however, things that are more about care and love for neighbor. Maybe they're oppressing widows and orphans. Maybe they're just not caring. And this is something that we deal with all the not all the more, but just in the exact same kind of ways today, right? People don't care about the homeless. They don't care about the hungry. They don't care about the poor, the naked, the downtrodden. Or maybe they care about some of them and not all of them. I know a lot of people who will give lip service to being against abortion, but they'll never lift their fingers about it, right? They'll never lift a hand over the issue. They'll never raise a voice over the issue. And for these kinds of issues, the Lord says, let justice roll down like waters and the righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. This is not good news for these people, right? Now, we might read this and say, oh, that sounds great. And in other cases, that would be, right? It's a contextual thing. This is one of the dangerous things with pulling verses out of context, isn't it? But in this case, in Amos, it is a dark day. It's a day of wrath, a day of judgment. It is not, how would you put it? It's not the kind of thing to simply celebrate, but something that is a call to repentance, if you will. Psalm 70. Be pleased, O God, to deliver me. O Lord, make haste to help me. Let those be put to shame and confusion who seek my life. Let those be turned back and brought to dishonor who desire to hurt me. Let those who say, aha, aha, turn back because of their shame. It's an interesting psalm in conjunction with Amos 5, because Amos 5 is about as harsh and condemnatory as the law really ever gets. And yet we have this super interesting thing, if you will, in that when we come here to Psalm 70, this is of deliverance. So Amos is preaching to us solely of you're screwed, yet, right? Psalm 70 it's not really news of deliverance, but a cry for it. And so they actually flow back to back. This is the horrible news of the coming judgment, which we've just heard is not going to end well for us. And so we cry out, "Oh Lord, deliver me." Now, the interesting thing here is we're asking the Lord in Psalm 70 to save us from our enemies. Whereas in Amos 5, not to get too Reformed Baptist-y, but in that kind of sense, he is the one that's accosting us. He is the one which we are to fear. He says, let all who seek you rejoice and be glad in you. Let those who love your salvation say, evermore, God is great, but I am poor and needy. Hasten to me, O God. You are my help and my deliverer, O Lord. Do not delay. Nevertheless, that is the way that it's going to have to homiletically and theologically flow together, is simply put, you have something to be saved from. And you can either go this kind of wrathful God and sell me in penal substitution-y kind of way, and it's God who you need to be saved from. Or you could go in what I would say is a little bit more true of a way, yourself, your sin, your death, your wickedness, your evil. It's you yourself that you need to be saved from. Either way, unless we are saved from whatever it is we need saving from by that last day, that day, Amos says, will not be good for you. Why? Because the Lord is going to come back and we're going to be foolish virgins. And we will get there in a second, but we're not there yet. First, we have 1 Thessalonians 13 through 18. But we do not want you to be uninformed, brothers and sisters. Actually, let's come back here after, because this is about hope in the resurrection. The kingdom of heaven will be like this. 10 bridesmaids took their lamps and went to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish, 5 were wise. When the foolish took their lamps, they took no oil with them. But the wise took flasks of oil with their lamps. As the bridegroom was delayed, all of them became drowsy and slept. But at midnight there was a shout, look, here's the bridegroom. Come out to meet him. Then all those bridesmaids, they get up, they trim their lamps. And the foolish said to the wise, give us some of your oil, for our lamps are going out. But the wise replied, no, there will not be enough for you and for us. For you had better go to the dealers and buy some yourself. They go, they can't find any, they're closed. It's time for the wedding banquet. They go back, there's no time, right? The idea is this: you are not ready. Simply put, we can try to sugarcoat the message. We can pretend it doesn't say what it says, but this is what it says. He says here, truly I tell you, I do not know you, right? And this is very much like that other text, Lord, Lord, we did this and we did that, and he says, I don't know you. Yeah, there's other things we could do there and say, well, they were trying to plead their works, such and such and such. But the fact of the matter is, both of these parables are about the condemnation of a condemned party of people who thought that they would get entry and didn't. Now, that's the thing. They thought they would get entry and they didn't. These texts are not about people who are far off, right? These are about people who had the lamps. They were waiting. They were almost ready, just not quite. right? And what's the Lord saying? Keep awake, therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour. I am coming back, and you must be ready. And this is true not just in a sense of the last day. It's true at all times. It's true of when he comes every time we have the Holy Eucharist. There he comes in that bodily, physical, present fashion. And there, if we go there and are unready, we partake of the Lord's Supper either without preparing ourselves, without examining ourselves, or just simply being not ready for that, for whatever reason it is, a lack of faith, lack of understanding. We're walking in a completely unholy and unrepentant way. Then when we take that, we'll take it to our own damnation. And so he's coming, right? That doesn't just mean he's coming on the last day. He's coming whenever we're in the liturgy. And we are to, at all times, be ready, not just beforehand when you come to the liturgy, not just, for example, a week before the last day, at all times. And it's not just a thing of escaping judgment, though, either. It's especially if we understand this as we are the thing we need to be saved from, our sin is the thing we need to be saved from, our death is the thing we need to be saved from, and we have already a way which we can escape sin, death, and the powerful grip of the devil, and we can live in that right now. Let us live in that always. Let us be awake. Let us not be asleep. Let us not be as those who are dead in their trespasses and sins, because death is not something in the future. It is something now. It is something you're either living in death now, you're living in sin now, or you're living in life now. You're living in forgiveness now. You're living in goodness now. Which will it be? Goodness or evil? Which way now? Because the same way you're going now is the same way you will be going forever, right? And this is why we have this constant, continual call to repentance, not just right before the final test, because really there is no final test, right? The test is now. The test is at all times. There's no real test, but you know what I'm saying. The Lord is coming. He is here. The Lord is among us now. And so we must repent, not later, but now. And so this is why, as Martin Luther said, the life of the Christian is a life of continual daily repentance, or as we say in our small catechism, what does such baptizing with water indicate? It indicates that the old Adam in us should be drowned and die with all sins and evil lusts, and that a new man daily should arise and come forth and live with us, in us, in all righteousness and purity before God forever. And that's the message. And so at all times, we're not to be the foolish virgins. We're to be those who are wise virgins, who have stocked up on oil. Of course, it's a little bit of a strange parable. Anyways, you can't really say, oh, and the let's meditate on the oil. You can't really do that. But what you would say is this: be ready, not just because there's a judgment day, and really, if that's your hang up, just, you can't forget about it. But it's a motif. It's not this kind of it's not as though God is waiting to damn you. That's not what it is, right? But God is coming to unveil and to reveal what is, right? To declare the world's opinions false and irrelevant, and his own divine truth, he's going to proclaim it to be objective reality. And so he is coming, but the thing is, he's not just coming later, he's coming now. In fact, he's here now. And so that is a way that we are either living in now or ignoring now. It's something we're believing now or denying now. So the call is now: do something, turn to him, believe in him, walk in the way of goodness, truth, and beauty, or die now, right? That's the message. Anyways, I'll leave you with that. However you take that. God bless you. Have a lovely Proper 27, and I will see you back here for Proper 28. I'll probably record that just later today, and then you'll have a little bit of a break. We might cover the Thanksgiving readings for our American friends, because most of you are Americans anyways. And then we've just got Christ the King, and that's it. And then we're rolling on to year B. Roland and I will be talking about some of our larger plans in regard to that. Of course, we started this all with year C. So that will be the whole 3-year revised common lectionary for you guys. And then we'll see, what do we want to do after that? Just keep going. Maybe we'll look at the 1 year. Maybe we'll look at something else. Who knows, right? Anyways, God bless you in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, one God. Amen.